Welcome to this episode of Out of the Best Books, the podcast where we deep dive into classic literature and have conversations about what we've learned and discovered along the way. We love all things books and reading, and we want to share our love of the classics with you. We hope to inspire you to read along with us and join in the conversation. I'm Laura.
And I'm Amity. Let's get started.
Well, we're super excited today to talk about summer reading. That's our theme.
Yes. And first of all, it's kind of fun every once in a while to do a very different episode where we just get to talk about lots of books, not necessarily just one in particular, breaking it down, but just lots of books, because between us, we've read a lot of books and there's still a lot more to read, but it's just so fun to just sort of pull from our archive and just talk about them. But the fun thing about today too is that we're going to not just talk about summer reading and our maybe some of our book recommendations, but we reached out to some of our good friends who are readers and got some of their recommendations. So I'm really excited about that too.
Yes, that's like my favorite is since I listen to a lot of bookish content, like podcasts and YouTube videos or whatever, everybody a couple months ago was putting out their summer reading lists. And
okay.
I just think those are so fascinating. And most of those people are able to read ahead. They get copies of books before they come out. And so they're telling you about books that are coming
that will be coming. Okay. Yeah.
So we're not there, but I think sometimes those books are hard to get. So yeah, we'll give you some ideas.
That's really true. And so I don't know. I think pretty much all the books I'm going to talk about are pretty easy to get, except for maybe one, but yeah. Cool. So a lot more accessible.
I'm excited. So I want to know what your summer looks like with reading. Is it different?
Yes, because I kind of, well, first of all, it always takes me a couple weeks to sort of get into this routine of summer. I think we're still getting over our first couple of weeks of summer, and this week we're getting into a better routine. And as we have, I've been I think I have time to sit down and actually read. I think that I can. And so I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to actually get myself a book from the library, and I plan to sit down and read. I don't have tons of time, so I'm still going to probably be listening to the majority of my books, but I plan to actually sit down and read a couple of books. So
yeah, I'm surprised. I'm reading that book that I told you guys. I mean, I told our audience about weeks ago. I'm still reading it because it's a physical book and I don't have that much time. But I read it 15, 20 minutes at a time. And sometimes in the morning, that's the first thing I do is I'll pull it out and read a chapter or two. And I pulled it out today and I was like, I can't believe how far into it I am. Just I mean, it's been a long time, but it doesn't really feel like I don't sit down and read for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I was listening to a book recently where the lady was doing research about a subject and she was reading books by a certain author. And she said her routine was every afternoon she'd sit down with this book and a cup of coffee or whatever and sit down and read. And I was like, okay, that's my goal this summer. It's we're going to get our work done in the morning, go do something fun. And then about 3:00, once I've tired Presley out, I'm going to sit down and read. Even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes, right?
Yeah. But that's just your time each day. I love it. That's awesome.
I hope I can make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've thought my kids are such sleepers, and I kind of changed my work schedule. So I mostly work in the evenings, which is actually so nice.
Really?
It really is. Yeah. I can't do that during the school year because everybody has all their stuff in the evenings, practices and games and things like that. But during the summer, it really works out because we just have all day, that we can do things together. But all that to say, I go exercise really early and then I come back and my kids are still sleeping for 2 hours. I'm trying to get back. They're total sleepers, which is great. So I'm that's the time that I'm going to use to read.
Yeah.
Probably not. Well, definitely not the full 2 hours, but because I'll also use that time to catch up on like everything else. But
About 15 or 20 minutes is
yeah,
something.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that's my plan.
totally. That's awesome that summer can be different and you can like, I don't know. It's hard for me because my schedule, other than I'm not doing schoolwork, so I'm not taking classes, my work schedule is the same. So I'm
Yeah.
still gone like on Tuesdays, I'm gone all day. Thursdays, I'm usually gone most of the day. But, my husband said, he's like, well, your schedule doesn't really change that much. No, it doesn't. But the
Yeah.
kids are home.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. It is.
They require my attention.
Yes.
Dang it.
So much cleaning all the
Yes.
time.
Don't you think you do dishes when they're home? Like it takes an adjustment period for the first couple of weeks where you just feel like you're just doing dishes all day long. I'm like, so
Yeah.
many people are here and they're eating and eating and eating. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. And like, and I'll even be like assign kids to just clean the kitchen and they'll do a pretty good job. And then, but a few hours later, you'd never know. So, like, welcome to life, guys.
I know, at least when they go to school, they like eat there for lunch. And so we do breakfast, get it cleaned up, and then it's clean until at least they get home from school.
Yeah.
Because I don't really eat. I don't have time for stuff like that.
Who's got time to like sit down and have a meal? Good
Well,
grief.
except your kids are home all the time. So, but it's probably not the same. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the kitchen is just always a disaster, but we do the best.
It's the hub of the home.
Yeah, oh, completely.
The other thing I'm going to try to do is okay. So I want to know this. Do you have goals for the kids with reading this summer?
Yeah, so as far like as far as me reading with them, the summer's really fun because we will just grab books that we are much less intense and just fun to sit down and read together. They're just because they don't necessarily fit into our curriculum or something, but they're just fun to read. So for the group read aloud part, that's really fun. And then for each of them, there's this thing that they do at our library. It's sort of the summer reading program in a way. It's called the Banana Split Book Club that the mayor does. And basically what he does is every week you go and you can check out one of these books that he has. And he's got quite a wide selection. And you get a little coupon, you get a banana split. And you read the book, and then throughout the summer, they have all these times that they show the movie. So he always gets books that have a movie that go with them. And anyway, so every time you go to the library, you can get a banana split pretty much with if it's on a Thursday. But you can read the book. You can, as soon as you return it, you also get a banana split. Then you can go watch the movie. You can get another book, go watch that movie. Anyway, so you could really read those books like all summer long, or you could do it as a family or whatever. So the kids are doing that. And then, and then I just expect them to read 30 minutes a day. And I do, like there's certain books that I just don't allow during the school year that I kind of loosen up on during the summer. I will say like some people refer to these books as twaddle. Captain Underpants, Diary of
Yes.
Wimpy Kid. That kind of thing that I'm like, why do you even like these? I don't understand, but like, well, oh well. During the summer they can read them. But I do like when we go to the library, I do expect that they will get like one of these good books that the mayor has. And like I said, I mean they're like Charlotte's Web, Nim's Island, Pippi Longstocking. They're good books. And then I always expect them to get another like solid literature book along with all their crap. And they have to read that book for 30 minutes a day. So it's not like super structured. But it's the summer. So
Yeah.
there's some structure without being too crazy.
Well, I feel like too, like as long as they're reading.
Yeah.
I mean, you want them to love reading. And so
Yes.
I don't know. I think what I've learned from listening to a lot of readers talk and podcast talk is that the people who read a lot are kids that their parents didn't control what they were reading.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people will say, yeah, my mom just sent me to the library and like if she knew what I was reading, she'd have died or whatever. But that was their like ticket into
Yeah.
being a reader, was they were just allowed free reign and they could read whatever
Yeah.
they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes good sense to me. And so I've tried to somewhat lean in that direction, especially during the summer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, it's one of those things that like if you always eat candy, you're never gonna love vegetables, you
Yes.
know? And
So like
so I'm
summer's a
like,
good time for that.
yes. And so give them the taste of the really, really good stuff so that while not totally withholding the fluffy stuff, so that they will appreciate the really good stuff. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I know,
Well,
right? I think that's great. Like summer's a good time for that. Presley said the other day, I was gonna check out, I don't remember if it was Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Captain Underpants. And she goes, but I knew you wouldn't let me. And I was like, I've never said that. So I don't know.
that's really funny. Like,
But she thinks she knew that I wasn't gonna. And I'm like, we've been reading those 39, or it starts with a 13-story treehouse. And I mean, they're graphic novels. There's just pictures and I'm like, whatever. If this is what gets her into loving reading, it's fine. But I love that. Like,
yeah.
they're not assigned reading as much in the summer and they can just go
Yeah.
have, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Reading something.
And speaking of graphic novels, like I know a lot of times they might get a bad rap, but like I think there's a lot of value to them, especially for like the different learning types. Maybe we've talked about this before. We probably have. But like something that Matt read this year in school was both the Odyssey and the Iliad. And they're both written by Gareth Hines. And they're totally graphic novels. And they're like kind of massive books. But he uses a lot of the actual language from the original books, you know, and you come out of it and you have a really good grasp of the story, but it's much more palatable, I think, for like a 7th, 8th grader. So
I can't remember when I read that for school. It might have been college.
I would imagine, I mean, like it's tough stuff. So
was he reading it for school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can be helpful, especially for kids, you know,
Oh, yeah.
kids like
so.
kids that have reading disabilities or struggle with reading. Like they've got to figure out what works for them. Like listen,
Yes.
does listening help? Does graphic novels help? You know, I was talking to a neighbor the other day that told me, well, he must be 74. He's like, I don't know how to read. He's like, I can read like words, you know, and like he can read to get get through life, right? But he's like, my first grade teacher never taught us to read, and I just never learned. So like he said, I can't read. He doesn't understand what he's reading. And
oh my gosh.
now I can't remember why I was telling you all this, but I thought that was very interesting. Like, yeah. So I guess back then, 70 years ago or 60 years ago, maybe we didn't know that we needed to try all these other methods of getting kids to read. So
Yeah, no, 100% for sure. And honestly, if we're being, I mean, maybe he really did go to like that crappy of a school, but maybe his teacher really did try to teach him, but that was just not the way that he learned at
right.
all. So yeah.
And some people struggle with reading words on a page, but they can listen and like totally get it. Or, you know, pictures can help them comprehend or whatever. I think we need to figure out how to reach kids where they are instead of saying, this is how we learn to read. And if you don't figure it out, then you're in trouble. You know what I mean? There's, you know, like, I mean, we didn't know. So my grandma, now that I look back when I was a kid, I'm like, oh yeah, she totally couldn't read. We didn't know until she was probably 80 that she did not know how to read.
That is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And really sad, you know, but it does. I mean, I've heard and read about these people too, that I think that it really gets to a point that they are very ashamed
Yeah, she hid it.
and they just they don't want to ever tell anybody, and so they never get help. And
Which is crazy to
um,
think like, I mean, think about how we are now. Okay, so she was an amazing cook, right? Couldn't read a recipe. Which now that I look back, I'm like, yeah, she didn't have any cookbooks. Like she just did it.
just
Or,
figured it out.
yeah,
Yeah,
she
that
cooked.
is
Like, I
amazing.
just can't even imagine living in this world and like trying to adapt
Yeah,
and figure out how to do what you need to do without being able to read. It's
yeah.
just crazy. But yeah, she only went to the first grade. Like she got through the first grade and then her dad didn't believe that women should be educated and so they pulled them out. Didn't. And the funny thing is,
Wow.
he was very educated.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Crazy.
Oh,
This is Mississippi in 1940, so there you go.
okay. Okay. There it is.
It's crazy.
Dang. Yeah,
Yeah,
that is.
and like my goal this summer is Presley is reading, but I don't think she's reading as well as she should be for the end of kindergarten. So I'm like, we're gonna do, sight words, and I'm just gonna work with her on reading like every day for half an hour.
Yeah.
Like she reads to me, and then and we always read together at night. I read to her, and what's funny now though is we'll pull out a book for me to read to her, and she wants to read it to me. It's really
Oh, that's awesome.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she has like
Oh,
a desire, but I'm like, okay, we gotta get quicker at sounding out words. Like
yeah. Yeah.
we could do
Um,
this.
there's lots of good things out there. The Good and the Beautiful has their little like level A, level B, level C, level D books that I think really helped Audrey so much.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
Um, so even if you just grabbed the level A, it's just these little tiny books. They're not intimidating at all. And it wouldn't take you very long for her to go through them. But the thing is she can just keep repeating them. And then you can move on to the level B.
Okay, so do you want to go into what our friends recommended first? I
Okay.
mean,
So I asked my friend Talia, who is a huge classics book lover. In fact, when I found that out, I was like, hey, my friend and I have a podcast. Maybe we'll have you on it sometime. She was like, I would love that. I love talking about books. And so she gave me a bunch of recommendations, and also kind of like me, like all of these are children's books. But the thing about children's classics we remember is that they speak to the adults as well. So these are great books. Okay, so the first one is The Summer of the Monkeys by Wilson Rawls. That, we have done Where the Red Fern Grows by him, and it was so wonderful. And this one is a really fun book about a boy who is like desperate to earn money to get a pony and a gun and to help his sister. And this a whole bunch of monkeys escapes from this train, and they're offering a huge reward to capture them. And so he spends his entire summer trying to capture them, and kind of like in Where the Red Fern Grows, his grandpa is his best sidekick, and they figure it out. And there are some really funny misadventures along the way. So it's a great book. The next one is just the entire uh, collection of Boxcar Children by Gertrude Chandler Warner. It's just these four children who are orphans, and they're always solving mysteries. They live with, man, I can't remember, his name is Mr. Alden. I remember that. But I can't I oh, he's their grandpa. It's their grandpa. Sorry. I don't I don't have a description of these books. It's just what I can remember off the top of my head. So super fun books. I remember just loving them.
I loved at least the first one.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cute. Just because they have so much ingenuity, and they're just really sweet and helpful and loving to each other, and just such good kids. And then they just go on to like solve all these mysteries. The next one is The Sign of the Beaver by Elizabeth George Speare, which I've talked about and recommended several times in conjunction with some other books. I love all of her books, and this one is again about a young boy. He's a colonist, and he has been left out in the wilderness while his dad goes back to get the rest of their family and bring them to join them because they'd gone out to like clear land and build a cabin. So he's just by himself. I think he's like 12 or 14. And he makes good friends with the Native American tribe that is right there. And they just learn to survive together. So it's really wonderful. Then The Swiss Family Robinson by Johann David Wyss. I don't know if I said that right, but there it is. Which admittedly I have never actually read. I've always felt like I was really familiar with it because I love the Disney movie like so much and I've watched it a million times. But I couldn't tell you like if it's exactly like the book or not. So I can't say, but I know like lots of people have loved it. Love it. And I know a couple of my kids have read it actually. And Tate especially has read it and he really enjoyed it. So the next one is Half Magic by Edgar Eagar. He just writes really fun books for kids. This one is about a bunch of kids. And gosh, we have it and we've read it and I just forgot exactly what it's about. But just lots of fun adventures that these kids have. And yeah, it's really good. It's really fun. It's one that we actually listened to and my kids just loved it. The next one is by Edith Nesbitt, who also wrote The Railway Children. It's called Five Children and It. It's the story of a group of children who move from London to the countryside of Kent. I'm guessing this might be during World War II. The five children, Cyril, Anthea, Robert, Jane, and their baby brother known as the Lamb, are playing in a gravel pit when they uncover a rather grumpy, ugly, and occasionally malevolent Samede, a sand fairy with the ability to grant wishes. The Samede persuades the children to take one wish each day to be shared among them, with the caveat that the wishes will turn to stone at sunset. This apparently used to be the rule in the Stone Age when all that children wished for was food, the bones of which then became fossils. The five children's first wish is to be as beautiful as the day. The wish ends at sunset and its effects simply vanish, leading the Samede to observe that some wishes are too fanciful to be changed to stone. I love it. I'm going to get this book and read it.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yes. Yes. So, and I have The Railway Children, but I don't have that one. So I'm going to have to track it down.
First one is my friend Rebecca. The first book is called The Sunshine Girls by Molly Fader. She says it's two friends, a lifetime of secrets, one sparkling story. And it's 1967 Iowa, and they are nursing school roommates. And they don't have much in common. And one of the girls has like risked her family's approval to pursue her dreams away from her town. And then the other one is cosmopolitan Kitty has always relied on her beauty and smarts to get by and to hide a painful secret. Yet the two share a determination to prove themselves in a changing world, forging an unlikely bond on a campus unkind to women. And then 50 years later, two estranged sisters are shocked when a famous movie star shows up at their mother's funeral. And they find out a bunch of like secrets about their family. So this is what she says. So two semi-estranged sisters meet a Hollywood legend who shows up unexpectedly at their mother's funeral. She leads them through their mom's life that they never knew existed. It's a pretty incredible tale of friendship, devotion, and commitment with a heartwarming ending. But anyways, so she said she really liked it. And Rebecca is like one of the most voracious readers I know. She reads like
that. Yeah, that's so awesome. I'm always like very impressed with everything that she's read. And she has all these books that like I've never even heard of before, which is awesome. Another of my friends, I asked her, and she told me her name is Alicia. And the first thing that came to her mind was one that I think is very popular, and I am really sad because I have not read it yet. But I'm glad she brought it up because I'm like, this needs to be on my summer reading list. It's Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and I like it. It is very popular, and I believe that they've made a movie now, right?
mm-hmm.
So, just very briefly, Where the Crawdads Sing is a coming of age story of a young girl raised by the marshlands of the South in the 1950s. Kind of a fun and horrible time, I think. When the town hotshot is found dead and inexplicably linked to Kaya, Do we know if that's how to say her
Yeah.
name? The Marsh girl is the prime suspect in his murder case. So I know I've always enjoyed books that are set in the 1950s. A lot of times they leave you just kind of like angry and like, what do I want to say? It's sort of a righteous indignation. I think
Yes.
that's a good phrase for how books from the 1950s leave me. But
That was a great one. And I read it, and then David and I went and saw it in the theaters, and he really liked the movie. So that's what you could do. You could read it and then watch the movie.
Then go watch the movie. That's a great idea. Very good summer activity.
Yeah. And it's a good summer book because she lives out in the wilderness by herself. And like there's lots of nature descriptions, and it's really good. It's very good.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. In fact, I think that's one that I will try to go actually pick up the physical book and read. So
the second one she recommended was, so this is another one, and she said, okay, it's called West with Giraffes by Linda Rutledge. And she says, talk about don't judge a book by its cover. I'm not really even particularly fond of giraffes. And I loved this book. Like, that would be me. You know, it's kind of like the octopus thing. Like, I'm like, I don't know about this, but basically it's about two giraffes are getting taken from the New York to the San Diego Zoo during the Depression. And it's based on a true story. And she said, it's such a fun book. One of the giraffes is injured from the ship they came in on being in a hurricane, and there aren't really any vets that have any knowledge of how to care for a broken giraffe leg while it's being hauled across the country on the back of a truck. So they have to fight off a traveling circus, and there's a lot of historical references throughout the book. Again, she said, super fun read. She listened to it, and she said it took a little bit to get used to the narrator, but once she did, she couldn't stop listening. So
awesome. I love that.
Yeah, that sounds it sounds interesting.
Okay, so another person that I asked was actually my husband, because I was like, I kind of wanted a man's perspective. And so two that he recommended are some of his favorites from when he was a kid, but again, these are for anybody. So Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huck Finn, or Huckleberry Finn, both by Mark Twain. And I feel like they're probably pretty well, like at least the plot is pretty well known. But they're both such good books. I think that they would be really wonderful to read, especially to like older kids, and to have lots of really wonderful discussions about them. And the summer would be a really good time to do that. So
they'd probably be good summer books. We just watched the last, how would you say this, comedy special of Norm Macdonald, who died during the pandemic. I think he died of cancer, and he recorded I think it was him. That said he loved the book Tom Sawyer. It was him. Okay, so he recorded his last stand-up act from home during the pandemic for Netflix.
Oh my gosh.
In one take, one night. So he was going in for like a procedure the next day, and he was worried. He's like, in case it goes south, I'm going to do this now. So he did it, and it's probably not appropriate, but absolutely hilarious. And then at the end of the special, all these other comedians like Adam Sandler and Dave Chappelle, a bunch of comedians talk about him and how brilliant he was and all this stuff. And they talk about how much he loved the book Tom Sawyer. Like, isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
Really weird.
It always kind of elevates people a little bit in my like, oh, you like really good books.
Yes, they appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought that was great. Okay, so my next one is from our friend Carlina, and I love this, and I would love to read it. So it's called As You Wish by Cary Elwes. I don't know how he says his last name, but
do you like Princess Bride?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So
okay, go ahead.
If you want a fun, light book, and if you like Princess Bride, or if you don't necessarily love Princess Bride. So
who are you if you don't love Princess Bride? Who are you? I
Well,
don't know.
you're either 20 or 80. If you're between 30 and 50, you probably do. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
she says it's about his experience making Princess Bride, and the audiobook has some of the other cast members in there, interspersed in there, talking about it. And she said, you don't have to be obsessed with Princess Bride to listen to it or read it, but it's still fun. And Sydney, our daughter, loves Princess Bride. And so I was thinking maybe I get this for her. Maybe this will be a Christmas.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a great idea. Oh my gosh, I might have to get that book. Um, yeah, speaking of comedians, I feel like he is a really funny person. Like everything else that he's in, he is just really funny. So
Yeah.
anyway.
I think that would be a fun one. I'm gonna put that on my list. I have one more hold available on Libby, and I'm
Oh,
like,
nice.
maybe that will be it.
We're not, I know. I'm just gonna like, oh, have a huge list of to be read and as many on hold as possible. So
Exactly.
hopefully some of these are on Hoopla. I don't know. Okay. I'm really excited to share the last one, and this is from my friend Isabella. And the book that she recommended for summer reading is also one of my favorites. It's The Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Rimmer. So it is a World War II book. In 1942, Europe remains in the relentless grip of war. Just beyond the tents of the Russian refugee camp she calls home, a young woman speaks her wedding vows. It's a decision that will alter her destiny, and it's a lie that will remain buried until the next century. It is, man, I just even think about it and I kind of get emotional and like chills. It's such a good book. It's very intense. It's all about sacrifice and bravery and doing what is necessary at every level. And it's also about like learning your family history. Love it. So it's wonderful. So, but I really love it because Isabella shared why she loved it. She said, this book was one of those books I couldn't put down. And when I finished, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It truly touched me, and I can't believe the suffering during the Holocaust and how strong and brave people were. It was beautiful and heartbreaking all at the same time. And I think that that is a really wonderful way to put it. In fact, I was just looking back in my book notebook and I found where I had entered The Things We Cannot Say, which was in 2020. And I just wrote incredible story of Polish citizens during World War II, beautiful and sad and inspiring and heartbreaking. Loved it. So both she and I agreed it was beautiful and heartbreaking.
If you loved The Nightingale by Kristen
Mhm.
Hanna or any of those, you would love this book. Or if you just love World War II.
Love World War. I know. Well, and on that note, I was just thinking, so this my same friend who recommended Where the Crawdads Sing, I had recommended to her The Light in Hidden Places, which I recommend to literally anyone who will listen, by Sharon Cameron. And so she had recommended it to her book group. And so they're reading it. And she is in the midst of reading it and she's like, I can't put it down. It's so good. And she's like, I just knew nothing about the Holocaust. And so now I'm really intrigued. And I'm like, good. Like, if any of these books help people, like, helps to pique interest
Yeah.
for them to learn more about it, because it is kind of shocking, like, how many people just don't know anything about it. So I think it's wonderful. All these really, really good books.
Yes. I just finished, I think this would be great. The Grace of Wild Things
Mm.
by, I can't read the name, Heather Fawcett. Okay. So it's like a magical retelling of Anne of Green Gables. And
Wow, that's
I
fun.
really liked it. She was like a witch that's an orphan, and like she wants to become an apprentice with this evil witch that is kind of similar to the witch that is in Hansel and Gretel and has this like amazing house,
Okay.
but then cooks kids and eats them.
Oh,
And so she becomes her apprentice, and the whole idea is if the girl doesn't um learn all these spells, like 1,000 spells, I can't remember how many spells, then the witch gets all of her magic. And what happens is they become close. So
of course they do.
But it was
That's really funny.
it was really interesting. It was fun to read because there were so many parallels with Anne of Green Gables, like her friends and the things that happened to her and how she's treated and her red hair. It's not in the book, in this book, it's not her red hair. It was something else that she doesn't like about herself, but I can't remember what it was. But anyways, I just finished that. And I think that would be a really fun one for the summer. Just I think it's probably YA.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine. It sounds like it.
Yeah, and I have Audrey reading it now because I, paid her $50 to read Anne of Green Gables earlier this year. And so I was like, would you like to read this? And she didn't say much, but then the other day she told me she's reading it. So I was like, oh,
Good.
good.
Awesome.
And it's only, because we go by hours, it's only 8 hours. Do you want to read more in the summer? I saw a post by one of my favorite people on Instagram is Everyday Reading, which is a lady that I believe lives in Provo, Utah. That she used to be a children. You know about her, but other people might not. She's used to be a children's librarian, and so she puts out all these book lists. She does a summer reading guide. She just put out the 100 best picture books this year, and but anyway, she did a post on like, do you want to read more? And it was all this: leave your phone in the car, leave your phone in your bedroom, or like, leave it, like, just put your phone down.
Yes, 100%.
That's the way to read.
Yeah, it is.
That's it.
And that's, I mean, for all of us, for me too, I think. So yeah, these dang devices.
I know. I just thought it was funny because I was like, okay, how could I, sometimes my phone will get down and I'll put it on the charger and forget about it for a while. And then I can't believe how much I get done or how much. And like, if my phone is next to me and I'm reading, my attention span is like 5 minutes and then I check it and then I might read 5 more minutes and then I check it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So there you go. I mean, kids aren't going to be like, yeah, I'll put my phone down. But as adults, if we want to read more, just leave your phone in the car, leave it at home, leave it. Like if I'm going to go, where was I recently that I left my phone and I could not believe how much more reading I got done while I was waiting.
Yeah. The children's book I'm going to recommend is The Penderwicks by Jeannie Birdsall. And it is such a summer book. You were just talking about Anne of Green Gables, and a lot of people sort of liken it to, it's sort of like a modern take on both Little Women and Anne of Green Gables, because there are these 4 kids. I read it to my kids years ago, and since then, almost all of them have there's a whole series of the Penderwicks, but I've only read the first one, but my kids have read, I think, all the rest of them because they just loved it so much. So the Penderwicks is a story about 4 young girls and their father who vacation for the first time in a cottage on an estate called Arundel Hall, which is located in the Berkshire Mountains. Though this wasn't their usual vacation destination, it would be the center of conversations for years to come. The children range in age from Batty, who is just 4 years old, to Rosalind, who is 12. Jane and Skye are 10 and 11, respectively, and they are joined by Hound Penderwick, something that was not revealed to the owner of the estate, Mrs. Tifton. Anyway, so it's just like all their adventures as they're living on this estate. And I think their father is a writer or something. So he's like mostly in their little house, which kind of reminds you of like an Airbnb or something. And the girls are just like roaming around, adventuring. They make friends with the boy who lives there on the estate. And they just have so many fun adventures. It's just really a sweet and fun, cute book. For the adult one, so this is going to be a series I'm actually going to recommend. And it may be polarizing, I don't know, but it's the Killing series by Bill O'Reilly, and generally Martin Dugard is his co-writer, co-author. And they are just so fascinating. These are some that my 2 boys have read a lot of. Ken has either listened to or read a lot of them. I've listened to a lot of them. They pull you in and just take you for a ride. I think Ken may have talked about Killing the SS.
Yeah.
How it just sucked him in. It was so good. And he was like edge of his seat to the point that he was like speeding down the freeway like way too fast because it was just got the adrenaline pumping. But anyway, he takes all of these historic events or people and just dives super deep into the history surrounding it. and gives you this incredible story. And the thing about it too that I really appreciate, there's so many things, so many books that we just don't know how credible they are. And something he tells us is that he's done his best to make it as credible as possible. And so everything that they write about, they don't write anything in there unless they've been able to find that exact thing in like two credible sources. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like everything that they write can be backed up by two other sources. That's how I should have said it. Everything in their books can be backed up by two other sources. So I feel like they've given it to us as factually as they possibly can. I also feel like they are good history books. Like I don't think that they try to put a certain narrative or spin onto it. It's just, here it is, you know? So, or like their personal biases or opinions. But
That
yeah,
reminds me of
they've
like,
been,
so the only one I've read is Killing Jesus.
mhm.
And that's totally how they approached it. It
Yeah,
was totally historical.
yeah,
Like, no, I wouldn't have known what they thought of him at all.
yeah, same,
Yeah.
same. Other than it was respectful.
Yeah.
It was respectful, but other than that, there was no opinion, there was no emotion. It was just, here it is, you know?
Yep.
And yeah, that one was incredible. Killing Reagan was excellent. Killing Lincoln was very good. What else? But yeah, I will second Killing the SS. That one it was very, very well done. So and then they've recently come out with Killing the Legends and Killing the Mob, and my boys have been reading those.
Oh.
So, and I will say I have gotten Tate reading Killing the Mob recently, so that's good.
So I'm excited to tell you what I'm reading. I'm reading the postcard because
Okay.
as soon as you told me it was on Hoopla, I was like, and I don't know if everybody that listens to us when we talk about like Hoopla or Libby, the difference is Hoopla, you can usually get it through your library, although like my mom's library doesn't have it and your library doesn't have it, but most do, I would say most do, but I don't know.
Maybe they just have to be like bigger city libraries.
Yeah, because my mom's in a little city too. So
Yeah, she is.
what it is. But you can get those books right away. So when Amity says to me, it's on Hoopla, I'm like, oh my gosh, that means you don't have to wait. But like Libby is also called Library to Go, and like you are allowed 6 holds, and like one of my holds, I have 2 weeks, one of them 6 weeks to wait, another in 6 weeks, 21 weeks on one of them, and then 22 weeks. So like you could wait for a book for 6 months, and sometimes it'll say several months wait.
Yes.
You're like, yeah, okay. So anyways, so yes, it was on Hoopla. It's a brand new book. So I was super excited to read it. So in a future episode, Amity is going to recommend the postcard. Postcard by Ann Berest.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a fancy French way of saying it,
but Berest. I don't know. She's French, and it was translated from French. But you said it was a little bit hard to get into, and I agree. Like the not the very beginning, almost the first half is like the story of her ancestors. It was like her mom is kind of telling her the story of her ancestors from World War II. And I felt like it was a lot of information. I don't know, and like hard to get into. But then once you get to where she's trying to figure out the postcard and who sent the postcard. So somebody sent her a postcard with 4 names from her ancestors that had died in Auschwitz. And once you get to that point, I think it really picks up. And it's like we're trying to figure out who sent it and why. And very good.
And you just learn so much along the way. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it's very good. And that came on a couple of summer reading guides from other book influencers that I read and saw. So I was like, okay, I'm reading this. And a lot of people said it was their favorite book of the year so far.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about that one. Okay, what are you reading?
I'm so glad. Okay, so speaking of having to wait a long time on Libby, so I just got a notification about a week ago saying, your hold is ready. And I looked at it, I was like, I don't even remember. But I was like, well, it looks good. And it's World War II, which I love. But it's one I'd put on hold back in November.
That's like 8 months.
Crazy, huh? Yeah. So it's called The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I was like, I don't even know how I heard about this. Maybe you recommended it. I have no idea. It was a long time ago. So, but it's about all these young ladies who during World War II are code breakers. And it sort of goes back and forth from 1947, just a few days before the wedding of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth, to 1940, 41, 42, like all those years, right in the middle of the war. And so it's these three girls who come together and become really good friends. All three of them are just brilliant. They just all three come from very different walks of life. And one of the girls was a debutante, whatever, the British version of a debutante. I don't know if they call them that there. She's been introduced at court and all these things. And she was actually like dating Prince Philip basically during the war. And that's why, they're in 1947. It's talking about, it's just a few days before the wedding. And so it kind of jumps back and forth. It shows the development of their friendship, all this code breaking going on. And at some point, one of the girls, so I'm only about halfway through, but one of the girls apparently betrays the other girls, but she in turn is betrayed by somebody else and she knows that things are amiss. And so she is somehow sent to an insane asylum to keep her from talking. To expose the mole. There was a mole in the code breaking group. And so she's trying to get help. In 1947, she's trying to get help from her two friends who really no longer speak, and they don't really want anything to do with her because she somehow betrays them. So it's quite the story. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. I can give more feedback when I'm done, but yeah, it's kind of a slow burn type of story. So I can't see what's coming. It's not predictable,
That's
which is
good.
good. Yeah, it's really
Have
good.
you read other stuff by her?
No, I haven't.
I've read the Alice Network and I've read the Huntress. It was the Alice Network. There's scenes in that will are burned into my mind.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll have
Isn't
to
that
check that
funny?
one
Like
out.
when that happens, it's like
Love it.
some books you read and like I'll read a book 3 months ago and look at my list and be like, I do not even remember anything about that. And then there's books I read 3 years ago that I'm like, well, I will never forget.
Remember forever. Totally.
Stuff that was in that. So she's an excellent author. Excellent.
Oh, yeah. Like I'm just kind of blown away by the writing in this book. It's really, really good.
And the Rose Code, I think, is it's one of her newer ones, which is probably why you had to wait so long.
Probably.
Next week, we're going to start Island of the Blue Dolphins. And that will go for 3 weeks. Yeah, we're going to do chapters 1 through 10, I think. So that's exciting.
And it's such a good book. Anyone who hasn't read it, just listen in. I think that you'll find that it's just beautiful. It's a wonderful book. And it's based on truth. It's Scott Odell's best effort at a tribute to a woman that we really don't know much at all about. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good book. Okay.
We're so happy you joined us for this episode. We hope you will join us next week as we discuss Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell, chapters 1 through 10. If you have suggestions for books we should read and discuss, please email us at thebestbookspodcast@gmail.com. We would love it if you would leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. We want to inspire and encourage as many people as we can to read out of the best books.
As Thoreau says, read the best books first, or you may not have a chance to read them at all. See you next week.